You ever hear someone speaking Italian and just stop and think, wow, that just sounds like music? You are definitely not alone. It's this common feeling that Italian has this special, almost melodic quality to it. But here's the big question. Is that feeling real? Is it based on the actual sounds of a language, or is there something else going on entirely? Okay, let's dive right into this and unpack the science, the sound, and the culture behind one of the world's most beloved languages. Go ahead, ask the internet this exact question. You're going to find a pretty clear winner. Time after time, in all these online polls and forums, Italian almost always comes out on top. It just seems to have this universal appeal. But why? I mean, really, what gives it that edge over the thousands of other languages out there? So this really gets us to the heart of the debate. On one side, you've got Italian, right? And we instantly connect it with things like art, romance, opera. And on the other side, you have a language like German, which, let's be honest, often gets this unfair reputation for sounding harsh and guttural, thanks in no small part to how it's portrayed in movies. So the real question is, are we actually hearing the language itself, or are we just hearing centuries of cultural baggage? Alright, so let's start with the most obvious suspect in this whole mystery, our own perceptions. Because we never listen to a language in a vacuum, right? Our brains are always making connections, pulling from movies we've seen, music we've heard, history classes, even personal experiences. A really perfect way to see this in action is to look at fictional languages. I mean, these weren't created by accident. They were literally engineered to make us feel a certain way. Eldish from Lord of the Rings was designed by J.R.R. Tolkien to sound elegant and beautiful. Meanwhile, Klingon was explicitly created to sound aggressive and totally alien. The creators were basically banking on our built-in ideas of what beautiful and harsh are supposed to sound like. And here's the kicker. The link is incredibly direct. Tolkien himself used the popular perception of Italian as his actual model for beauty. Just think about that for a second. The idea of Italian as an inherently soft and flowing language is so deeply baked into our culture that it's used as the gold standard for creating beauty from scratch. You see, it's almost impossible to separate a language from its cultural aura. When we hear Italian, our minds might just drift to Renaissance art, incredible food, or soaring romantic operas. But on the flip side, our perception of German has often been so unfairly shaped by its use in war films and by Hollywood villains, completely ignoring its rich, beautiful history of poetry and philosophy. Okay, so at this point, the case seems pretty much closed, right? It's all just cultural association. Simple. But that's where things get really interesting. Let's move on because a fascinating scientific study is about to complicate this beautifully simple answer. Well, this is the exact question a team of linguists at Lund University in Sweden decided to figure out. They designed this incredible experiment where they played recordings of hundreds of different languages to people from all over the world. And the listeners, they were asked to rate the languages based purely on how they sounded, with no idea what language they were actually hearing. And the results were just fascinating. Even when you strip away all the cultural context, some languages were consistently rated as more pleasant sounding than others. And guess what? Italian and French were still right up there at the top. Tonal languages, on the other hand, tended to rank a bit lower, maybe because those shifts in tone can sound a little unfamiliar or even sharp to people who don't speak them. So what the study proved is that culture is a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole story. There seems to be something objectively pleasing about the sound of Italian all on its own. So if it's not just culture, what in the world is actually happening at a phonetic level that makes Italian so easy on the ears? Okay, let's get into the weeds a little bit. Let's dive into the actual sonic ingredients. What is it about the nuts and bolts of the Italian language that gives it that famously musical quality? To do that, we have to look at its phonetic structure. So Italian has a few key things really working in its favor. First, it's highly phonetic, which makes it sound super clear. But more importantly, it has this beautiful rhythmic dance going on between its consonants and vowels. Almost every single syllable ends in a vowel, which creates this open and flowing sound with no harsh, abrupt stops. Then you add in those liquid L sounds and that famous rolling R, and you've basically got a recipe for melody. And it is absolutely no coincidence, then, that the international language of music is Italian. Because opera was born in Italy, its vocabulary became the world's vocabulary for describing music. Think about it. Words like allegro and crescendo, they don't just describe music, their very sound feels musical, and that's all thanks to that same phonetic structure. Let's do a little audio experiment right now. Just think of the word for butterfly. Okay, in English we have butterfly. In French, it's papillon. In German, you get schmetterling. And then, in Italian, farfalla. The difference in the sound is it's immediate, it's striking. This quote just captures that sensation perfectly. The sound of the word farfalla almost seems to mimic the very thing it describes. This is a concept called sound symbolism, where the phonetics of a word actually evokes its meaning. The word itself just feels light and airy, just like the thing it represents. It's amazing. Okay, so we've got two incredibly powerful forces at play here. We've got cultural association, and we've got pure phonetic beauty. But there is one final piece to this puzzle that brings it all together. Remember that Swedish study we talked about? Well, it revealed one more critical ingredient. The researchers found that people consistently rated languages they recognized, or even just thought they recognized, as more beautiful. It turns out familiarity breeds affection. We like what we know. So this brings us to the whole picture. Italian's reputation for being so beautiful is built on this powerful, self-reinforcing loop. It starts with an inherently pleasant phonetic structure, the actual sound. Then that sound is massively amplified by all these positive cultural associations with art and food and romance. And finally, its global presence through music, film, and cuisine makes it familiar, which makes it even more appealing to people all over the world. Ultimately, while science can point to all the phonetic reasons for Italian's appeal, this quote is such a good reminder that our perception of beauty is always, always personal. You know, the language that sounds the most beautiful to you might be tied to a memory, a person, or a place that just holds a special meaning for you. And that brings us to the final thought for today. We've seen that Italian has a really strong case, backed by both science and culture. But what about you? Is there a language out there whose sound just resonates with you more than any other? And what do you think makes a language beautiful? It's a pretty fascinating question to think about.